Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. Well, if you're a canner, you know that there has been a shortage of lids. And while in many places in the country there are plenty of lids available, some places folks are still having a hard time finding lids. So I decided it was time to buy some lids of different new brands and test them out for you. So this is the second in a series of testing new brands of lids. Before we get started, if you like our videos, give us a thumbs up. And if you will, subscribe. Makes me feel good. So let's start our review of Pure lids and jars. Well, I bought a dozen of the wide mouth pints in Pure lids and jars. I got them at Ace Hardware, which I think that's where you mostly find the Pure lids and jars. They were about the same price as Ball lids and jars normal price, but I have to say the Ball prices have been inflated around here lately. So these were actually cheaper than what I could have bought the Ball lids and jars for. So let's open these up. And while I'm opening, I'm going to take just a minute to talk about just my opinion of why I think it's important for us to take a chance on new lids and jar brands. I have an opinion, and mark it as that opinion, that one reason there is a shortage is because over the years we have pretty much gone down to one manufacturer for canning lids and rings. And please be clear, I am not knocking Ball. I like Ball. I trust Ball. Oh, look, this is a nice jar. Nice little pattern on it. Sorry, squirrel. Anyway, but when you get down to one manufacturer for a market as large as canning supplies is, then any little hiccup in the system is going to cause a shortage. Break here. I'm checking the seal, the rubber seal, or the sealing ring on this jar. Let me tell you that this ring is made out of plastisol, which is the same material that Ball uses. So this is a nice lid. It's got a little button on it. The jar has no nicks. It's very attractive. Okay, back to my opinion. So when there is a shortage and you have only the one manufacturer, you will have new companies come in to try to fill the void. And I think it's important to support those efforts so that the next time there's a hiccup in the system, we don't all end up without lids again. We're diversifying the market. And please understand, I'm not saying that you should order those cheap knockoffs that you find on Amazon with no identifying information. What I have done is look for some American companies that may be contracting with Chinese manufacturers, but quality control is in the hands of the American company, and I'm trying them, buying just a small amount, giving them a shot. And if these companies succeed, we all benefit. So I have opened the package. I have all of my jars out. I'm checking for nicks, and I'm going to go through the lids, and I'm going to check to make sure there's no gap in the sealing compound. And I'll check the rings to make sure they're not out of round. Note here, I did mention that the sealing compound on these lids is plastisol. There are many of the new brands, several, that have a sealing compound made out of silicone. And some people have taken it upon themselves to circulate the rumor that you should not use silicone in canning because the melting point is too high. I have gone in depth on this explanation in my product review of 4 jars lids, and I'll link it at the end of this video just so you can hear it. But the short version is they're wrong, wrong, wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. Silicone can be formulated to melt at canning temperatures. Okay, I've inspected and washed my jars, and I'm going to can what I'm calling Salisbury steak. I'll also link that video at the end. And I'm only going to show you filling one jar, just to show you that I am canning just the same with these as I would can with ball lids, almost the same as I would can with Tatler lids. This, by the way, is a National Center for Home Food Preservation recipe with just a couple of minor variations. Safe variations, I will emphasize. I'm emphasizing because some lady on Facebook went off on me saying that it wasn't safe to can meat formed into patties, but if you look at the recipe, it says you can form the meat into patties or balls. Okay, here is a quick note about these jars. If you can see, they are not straight-sided. There is a slope, a reduction from the top to the bottom on these jars. And had I noticed that, I would not have planned this canning project in these jars. Only because I shaped the meat to be the size of the lid, and they don't fit really well down into the bottom. Okay, there's also an issue, partly because of that, with debubbling. So I'm going to get something smaller to debubble with, and try not to mess up my carefully formed patties here. But as you can see, I'm just using the same procedure with these as I would use with the ball lids. Here's another little opinion note. So the last time we had a severe shortage of canning lids was back in the 70s. And when that happened, a guy named Loren Stieg invented Tatler lids to help fill the void. And I use Tatler lids a lot, partly because I like them, because they're reusable, partly because I think it's important to support innovation and innovative companies. Okay, cleaned my rim with vinegar as always. Very important when you're canning meat, because meat always has a little fat in it. And we're going to place the ring carefully. Now I always turn the ring backwards until it seats. This is one way I'm checking to make sure the ring is in perfect round. Then finger tight, turn it until the jar moves, and then about another 1/4 to 1/2 inch just with your fingers. And this is the final product. When I took these out of the canner, I let them sit 12 hours undisturbed. I thump on the top of the jar to make sure of the sound. I'm checking all the buttons. All the buttons are down. Let's take these rings off, and yeah, there's a little fat on the outside of the jar. You can feel it. Of course, I'm going to wash these before I put them away. When you take the ring off after 12 hours, before 24, pick the jar up, just holding the ring. Give it a little shake, make sure it's sealed. We'll go all the way through, and I'll let you see me do this with all of the jars. So far, they're sealed tightly. And when you do this, don't be careful. Give it a little shake. Bump it around a little bit. Now these have a little bit of fat around the top. Didn't have a lot of siphoning. Did have a little fat. It's the very nature of meat that you can rarely get all the fat, every single bit of the fat off. This jar siphoned a little bit. Not bad though. Checking that one, it's fine. Let me add this little note. When I am canning loose browned ground beef, I rinse it with water. But because I formed these into patties, there's some fat that's trapped in the middle. The problem with fat is that it can cause a seal to fail. climbs up the sides of the jar and gets between the lid and the jar. And since these are sealed very well, they appear to be sealed very well, then that little bit of fat is not a problem. So I'm almost done here. I just want you to see me check them all, since that's the main thing about a lid. You want it to seal, you want it to not buckle. And you'll notice none of these lids buckled. So I'm going to call this a success. I like these. The jars are pretty. There was no damage in the package. Everything's sealed. And it's sealed canning meat, which can, with the fat involved in canning meat, can sometimes be a problem. By the way, I bought these jars. Nobody gave me these jars. I'm not getting anything for a review, good or bad. I'm going to let these sit for a month, and then I'm going to come back and open one. I will video that, and when I do that, I'll put the link to that video in the info section so you can see the 1 month follow-up on how these lids did. So I'm happy with these jars and lids. I'm going to recommend them. Hope you try them, and I hope to see you again tomorrow on Debbie's Back Porch.